Hello and welcome to Dramatis Personae. I'm Carl St. Lucie, and this is the only Star Trek Read Aloud show in the Alpha Quadrant. We're coming to you from 4 different time zones. This week, the show is going to benefit Random Acts, randomacts.org. Casey, do you think you could tell us a little bit about why you nominated this organization?
Sure, yeah, so Random Acts is, I actually found out about it because it was founded by Misha Collins, who is an actor. He plays Castillo on the show Supernatural. a show that I am obsessed with. And it's an organization that they do a lot of partnerships with like smaller local charities, and they do a lot of projects to like build schools and like pay for buses and things. So they have a pretty big education focus, and they do stuff worldwide too, lots of various countries. And right now they're doing a lot of work to try to support organizations that are providing COVID relief. So they're a really great organization. And one of their big tenets is that they want to try to encourage people to be kind.
Yeah. Well, we certainly could use a lot of that right now. So yeah, if you let me spotlight myself again. Um, and so yeah, if normally I'd say a show like this in New York, tickets would probably be around $15 to $20. If you feel so led, I'd love it if you would donate about that amount to Random Acts, because we're all giving our time here for fun, but we feel that it's important to shine a light on some of the really good work being done in the midst of this crisis. I'd like now to introduce you to our cast. I'm going to say their names, and then they're going to tell you what parts they're playing. And let me do that. So first, we have Angel M. Castillo.
Greetings. I am playing First Officer Spock, also Science Officer on the USS Enterprise.
Wonderful. And we have Casey Lowry.
Hello, I'm playing Lieutenant UHURA.
We have Charlene Templeman.
Hi, I'm playing Freeman.
We have David X. Crowe.
I am playing CHEKOV.
James Field.
I'm playing Cyrano Jones.
JB Flat.
I am providing narration.
John L. Rogers. Do we have John? All right, we'll come back to John. Leah Newton.
Hi, I will be playing Mr. BARIS.
Wonderful. Leta. Chrisman.
I'll be playing Klingon Captain KOLOTH.
Wonderful. We have Maksim Rex.
Hi, I'm playing the barman.
We have Morgan Murphy.
Hello, I'm playing Dr. Leonard H. McCoy, also known as Bones, the CMO on the Enterprise.
Wonderful. We have Paul Bloomer.
Hello, I am playing DARVIN.
Randall C. Brown.
I am playing Mr. LURRY.
Robbie Lawton.
Hello, I'm playing Admiral Fitzpatrick.
Becks Renfro.
Hello, I am playing Captain James T. KIRK.
Steffi. Steffi, you there? Uh-oh.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. That's okay.
Yes, hello. I am playing Lieutenant Montgomery Scott.
And Zack Coates.
Hi, I'm playing KORAX and a guard.
Yes, perfect. Is John there? John, are you there? Okay. Give me just one moment, folks. I'm going to go to a bumper, and we will be right back while I figure this out. We do not have John L. Rogers today. That was totally my fault. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to do this with us. We're having a lot of fun, and I hope you are too. I want to make a special note today to note that Becks and JB have recorded the Star Trek theme song for this episode, and I truly can't wait for you to see it after the teaser. And with that, let's get started with the 15th episode of the second season of Star Trek, written by David Gerrold, The Trouble with Tribbles.
The stardate is 4523.3, and we open in the Enterprise briefing room.
Deep Space Station K7 now within sensor range, Captain.
Good. Mr. CHEKOV, this flight is supposed to provide both experience and knowledge. How close will we come to the nearest Klingon outpost if we continue on our present course?
1 parsec, sir. Close enough to smell them.
That is illogical, Ensign. Odors cannot travel through the vacuum of space.
I was making little jokes, sir.
Extremely little, Ensign.
Mr. Spock, immediate past history of the quadrant?
Under dispute between the two parties since initial contact. The Battle of Denatu 5 was fought here nearly 23 solar years ago. Inconclusive.
Analysis of disputed area.
Undeveloped. Sherman's planet is claimed by both sides, our Federation and the Klingon Empire. We do have the better claim.
The area was first mapped by famous Russian astronomer Ivan Burkov almost 200
John Burke.
years ago. Burke, sir? I don't think so. I'm sure it was...
John Burke was the chief astronomer at the Royal Academy in Old Britain at the time.
Oh, Royal Academy. Well...
Is the rest of your history that faulty, Ensign? Key points of dispute.
Under the terms of Organian Peace Treaty, one side or other must prove it can develop planet most efficiently.
And unfortunately, though the Klingons are brutal and aggressive, they are most efficient.
I remember once Peter the Great had a problem like that. He was able to...
Captain?
KIRK here.
Captain, I'm picking up a subspace distress call. Priority channel. It's from Space Station K7.
Go to warp factor 6.
Code 1 emergency. That's disaster call.
This is a red alert. Man your battle stations. All hands.
End of teaser.
Space. The final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its primary mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations. To boldly go where no man has gone before.
All right. Thank you so much for that. That was so great. JB, take it away.
We begin Act 1, and we hear Kirk in voiceover.
Captain's log. Stardate 4523.3. Deep Space Station K7 has issued a Priority 1 call. More than an emergency. It signals near or total disaster. We can only assume the Klingons have attacked the station. We're going in, armed for battle.
Main phase is armed and ready, sir.
The space station is on the main viewer, looking intact.
But there's nothing there, sir. Just the station.
Priority 1 distress call? And it's just absolutely peaceful. Lieutenant UHURA, break subspace silence.
Aye, sir. The channel's open, sir.
Space Station K7, this is Captain Kirk of the Enterprise. What is your emergency?
Captain Kirk, this is Mr. Lowry, manager of K7. I must apologize for the distress call.
Mr. Lurry, you issued a Priority 1 distress call. State the nature of your emergency.
Well, you'd better come over. I'll try to explain.
You'll try to explain. You'd better be prepared to do more than that. Kirk out. Mr. Spock, I'll need your help. Mr. CHEKOV, maintain battle readiness. Lieutenant UHURA, see that the transporter room is standing by.
Aye, sir. Transporter room, stand by.
In Lowry's office on Space Station K7, Kirk and Spock arrive in the two-man transporter alcove.
Mr. Lurry, Mr. Lurry, if there was no emergency, why did you issue a Priority 1 distress call?
That was my order, Captain.
Captain Kirk, this is NILZ BARIS. He's out from Earth to take charge of the development project for Sherman Planet.
And that gives you the authority to put an entire quadrant on defense alert?
Mr. Barris is the Federation Undersecretary in charge of agricultural affairs in this quadrant.
And that gives him the authority.
This is my assistant, DARVIN.
And this is my first officer, Mr. Spock.
Mr. Spock.
And now, Captain, I want all available security guards. I want them posted around the storage compartments.
Storage compartments? Storage compartments?
The storage compartments containing the quadrotriticale.
The what? The what? What's quadrotriticale?
Lowry hands him a small packet.
Wheat. So what?
Quadrotriticale is not wheat, Captain. Of course, I wouldn't expect you or Mr. Spock to know about such things, but quadrotriticale is a rather...
Quadrotriticale is a high-yield grain, a four-lobed hybrid of wheat and rye, a perennial also, if I'm not mistaken. Its root grain, triticale, can trace its ancestry all the way back to 20th century Canada.
Mr. Spock, I think you've made your point.
Quadrotriticale is the only Earth grain that will grow on Sherman's planet. We have several tons of it here on the station, and it's very important that the grain gets to Sherman's planet safely. Mr. Barris thinks that Klingon agents may try to sabotage it.
You issued a Priority 1 distress call for a couple of tons of wheat?
Quadrotriticale!
Of course, Captain, I realize that...
Mr. Barris, you summoned the Enterprise without an emergency. You'll take full responsibility for it.
What do you mean?
Misuse of the Priority 1 channel is a Federation offense.
I did not misuse the Priority 1 channel. I want that grain protected.
Captain, couldn't you at least just post a couple guards? We do have a large number of ships passing through.
It would seem a logical precaution, Captain. The Sherman's Planet affair is of extreme importance to the Federation.
Kirk to Enterprise.
Enterprise here.
Secure from General Quarters, and beambound 2, and only 2, security guards. Have them report to Mr. Lurry. Authorize shore leave for all off-duty personnel.
Yes, Captain.
Kirk out.
Captain Kirk, how dare you authorize a mere 2 men for a project of this importance? Starfleet Command.
I have never questioned the orders of the intelligence of any representative of the Federation. Until now.
Kirk storms out of the office. At the K7 bar, a woman serves drinks.
Summoning a starship on a Priority A1 channel to guard some storage compartments? Storage compartments of wheat?
Nevertheless, Captain, the Klingons would not enjoy seeing us successfully develop Sherman's planet.
I guess not.
Kirk downs his drink in one and heads for the door, where they meet CHEKOV and UHURA coming in.
I see you didn't waste any time taking your shore leave.
How often do I get shore leave?
She vents to shop and I thought I would help her.
Oh, excuse me. Excuse me.
Mr. CHEKOV, what do you make of this?
Oh, Kvedro Tritikali. I've read about this, but I've never seen any before.
Does everybody know about this sweet but me?
Not everyone, Captain. It's a Russian invention.
Ah.
KIRK and SPOCK leave.
I don't want any. I've told you before, and I'm telling you again. I don't want any more spike and flame gems. Thanks to you, I already have enough spike and flame gems to last me a lifetime.
How sad for you, my friend. You won't find a finer stone anywhere, but I have something better. Surely you want some Antarian glow water?
I use that to polish the flame gems.
You're a difficult man to reach, but I have something from the far reaches of the galaxy. Surely you want...
From yet another pocket, the trader pulls out what looks like a ball of fluff.
Not at your price.
What is it? Is it alive? May I hold it?
Jones puts it in her hand and it starts purring.
Oh, it's adorable. What is it?
What is it? Why, lovely lady, it's a tribble.
A tribble?
Only the sweetest creature known to man, excepting, of course, your lovely self.
Oh, it's purring. Listen, it's purring.
It's only saying that it likes you.
Are you selling them?
That's what we're trying to decide right now.
My friend, 10 credits apiece is a very reasonable price. Now you can see for yourself how much the lovely little lady appreciates the finer things.
1 credit apiece.
You won't bite, Philly?
Sir, transporting harmful animals from one planet to another is against regulations. Or weren't you aware of that? Besides, tribbles have no teeth.
All right, I'll double my offer. 2 credits.
Twice nothing is still nothing.
Well, if you're not going to take him, I'm going to take him. I think he's cute.
4 credits.
Is that an offer or a joke?
That's my offer.
That's a joke.
5.
I can see you're an honest man. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to lessen my price to 8.5 credits.
You're talking yourself out of a deal, friend. 6 credits, not a credit more.
7.5. 7? All right, you robber. 6 credits.
Done. When can I have them?
Right away.
All right. What are you selling them for?
Well, let me see, little lady. 6 credits. Figure a reasonable markup for a reasonable profit. Say 10% markup. 10 credits.
Thief.
In fact, I'll sell you this one.
The tribble eats grain split from the packet KIRK gave CHEKOV.
Hey, he's eating my grain.
That'll be 10 credits.
That happens to be my sample, and I'll do with it as I please. And I please to give it to the lovely little lady here.
Oh, I couldn't. Could I?
I insist.
What are you trying to do? Ruin the market?
Once this lovely little lady starts to show this precious little darling around, you won't be able to keep up with them.
Up in the Enterprise briefing room.
Yes, what is it?
Priority channel. Message from Starfleet, Captain. Admiral Fitzpatrick speaking.
Put it on visual, Lieutenant.
Captain Kirk?
KIRK here.
Captain, it is not necessary to remind you of the importance to the Federation of Sherman's planet. The key to our winning of the planet is the grain Quadrotriticale. The shipment of it must be protected. Effective immediately, you will render any aid and assistance which Under Secretary BARIS may require. The safety of the grain and the project is your responsibility. Starfleet out.
Now, that's just lovely.
But not totally unexpected.
Captain KIRK! Captain KIRK!
Yes, Lieutenant. What is it?
Sensors are picking up a Klingon battlecruiser rapidly closing on the station.
Go to red alert. Notify Mr. Lurry. We'll be right up.
On the Enterprise bridge.
What is the position of the Klingon ship?
100 kilometers of K7. It's just sitting there.
Captain, I have Mr. Lurry.
Put him on visual.
Aye, sir.
Mr. Lurry, there's a Klingon warship hanging 100 kilometers off your station.
I don't think that the Klingons are planning to attack us.
Why not?
Because at this moment, the captain of the Klingon ship is sitting right here in my office.
Cancel red alert. We'll beam right down.
Security, cancel red alert.
End of Act 1. We begin Act 2 with an exterior view of the Enterprise near Deep Space Station K7.
Captain's log, stardate 4524.2. A Klingon warship is hovering only 100 kilometers from Deep Space Station K7, while its captain awaits in the station's manager's office. Their intentions are unknown.
In Lowry's office, there are false smiles all around as Kirk and Spock are greeted by a Klingon.
Ah, my dear Captain Kirk.
My dear Captain KOLOTH.
Let me assure you that my intentions are peaceful. As I've already told Mr. Lowry, the presence of my presence here is to invoke shore leave rights.
Shore leave?
Captain, we Klingons are not as luxury-minded as you Earthers. We do not equip our ships with, how shall I say it, non-essentials?
We have been in space for 5 months. What we choose as recreation is for our own business.
I might also add that under terms of the Organian Peace Treaty, you cannot refuse us.
Yes, well, I don't make those decisions. Mr. Lurry is in charge of those matters.
Captain, may I speak to you a minute?
Lurry takes Kirk aside.
Kirk, I don't want them here, but I don't have the authority to refuse.
Well, I have the authority to act, and I'm going to use it. My dear Captain KOLOTH, you may indeed bring your men down on shore leave, but only 12 at a time. And I assure you that for every man you bring down here, I shall have one security guard. There will be no trouble.
Captain Kirk, there's been no formal declaration of hostilities between our two respective governments, so naturally our relationship will be a peaceful one.
Let us both take steps to keep it that way.
Of course.
In the Enterprise rec room, Scott is at a monitor reading when Spock and Kirk enter.
Another technical journal, Scotty?
Aye.
Don't you ever relax.
I am relaxing.
There is a crowd at a long table, and there are purring sounds.
Hey, how long have you had that thing, Lieutenant?
Since yesterday, Doctor. This morning, I found out that she had had babies.
Well, I'd say in that case, you got a bargain.
You running a nursery, Lieutenant?
Oh, Captain. Well, I hadn't intended to, sir, but the Tribble had other plans.
Did you get this at the space station?
Yes, sir.
Most curious creature, Captain. Its trilling seems to have a tranquilizing effect on the human nervous system. Fortunately, of course, I am immune to its effects.
Everyone stares. Spock suddenly realizes what he is doing and puts it down. Spock and Kirk leave.
Lieutenant, do you mind if I take one of these down to the lab to see what makes it tick?
Well, all right, Doctor. But if you're going to dissect it, I don't want to know about it.
I won't harm a hair on its head, wherever that is.
Hey, Lieutenant, seeing as you're giving them away, can I have one?
Sure, why not? I think they're old enough. Go ahead.
In the Enterprise corridor.
Reach to Captain Kirk.
Kirk here.
Mr. Barris is waiting on Channel E to speak to you, sir.
Pipe it down here, will you, Mr. CHEKOV?
Aye, sir. Mr. Barris is coming on.
Yes, Mr. Baris, what can I do for you?
Kirk, this station is swarming with Klingons.
I was not aware, Mr. Baris, that 12 Klingons constitutes a swarm.
Captain Kirk, there are Klingon soldiers on this station. Now I want you to keep that grain safe.
Mr. Baris, I have guards around the grain. I have guards around the Klingons. The only reason those guards are there is because Starfleet wants them there. As for what you want, it has been noted and logged. Kirk out.
Captain, may I ask where you'll be?
Sick bay with a headache.
In sick bay, there are 11 fluffy tribbles of various sizes and color in a large container.
Hi, Jim.
Bones, what have you got for a headache?
Let me guess. Klingons? Baris?
Both. How many of these did UHURA give you?
Just one.
But you've got 11.
You noticed that, huh?
McCoy hands Kirk some medication.
Here, this ought to take care of it.
How do they...
I haven't figured that out yet. But I can tell you this much. Almost 50% of the creature's metabolism is geared for reproduction. Do you know what you get if you feed a tribble too much?
Fat tribble.
No. You get a bunch of hungry little tribbles.
Well, Bones, all I can suggest is you open up a maternity ward.
In the transporter room on the Enterprise.
I want all you men who are going on shore leave to stay in groups. Avoid trouble with the Klingons.
I'll tell them before they go, sir.
Aren't you going on shore leave, Scotty?
Why no, sir.
I want you to go on shore leave. Make sure that everybody stays out of trouble.
But, Captain, aye, sir.
Scotty, enjoy yourself.
At the K7 bar, business is good. Scott, CHEKOV, and Freeman take the last vacant table. 2 security men leave and Jones enters, whistling.
Ah, friend. Can I offer you a charming little tribble?
No thanks.
Oh, perhaps one of you other gents? Ah, friend Klingon. Can I interest you in a harmless tribble?
Tribble screeches.
Ah, friend Klingon. Can I interest you in a harmless tribble?
Get it away from me.
I'm sorry, I can't understand it. I've never seen them act this way before.
Get out of here with that parasite.
He's only a harmless little...
Take it away.
Yes. Ah, my good friend. How would you like to enter another little transaction? This time a tribble for a spot of...
A tribble.
Indeed.
A tribble.
The pretty lady in yellow brings our group their drinks.
Yeah, I've IT problems. I've lost my script. I'm trying to get it back. Yeah. Once we're in conversation, I've kind of memorized my lines, so just so long as I know where we start, I'll probably be all right. When you got okay, ready to go? Yeah. When you gonna get off that milk diet, lad?
This is vodka.
Where I come from, that's soda pop. This is the drink for a man.
Scotch.
Aye.
It was invented by a little old lady from Leningrad.
KORAX goes over to the bar and shares his drink with Jones.
The Earthers like those fuzzy little things, don't they?
Oh, yes.
Frankly, I've never liked Earthers. They remind me of Regulan bloodworms.
That Cossack.
Easy, lad. We can take a few insults.
No, I just remembered. There is one Earther who doesn't remind me of a Regulan bloodworm. That's KIRK. A Regulan bloodworm is soft and shapeless, but KIRK isn't soft. KIRK may be a swaggering, overbearing, tin-plated dictator with delusions of godhood, but he's not soft.
CHEKOV leaps to his feet.
Take it easy, lad. Everyone's entitled to an opinion.
CHEKOV sits
That's
back down.
right. And if I think that KIRK is a Denevian slime devil, well, that's my opinion too.
CHEKOV rises again.
Sit. Don't do it, mister. That's an order.
You heard what he characters he kept in.
Yeah, everyone's entitled to opinion. We're big enough to take a few insults. Now sit down and drink your drink.
Scotty swaps CHEKOV's vodka for Lieutenant Freeman's red wine.
Of course, I'd say that the Captain KIRK deserves his ship. We like the Enterprise, we really do. That sagging old rust bucket is designed like a garbage scow. Half the quadrant knows it. That's why they're learning to speak Klingonese.
Mr. Scott!
Laddie, do you think you might want to rephrase that?
You're right. I should. I didn't mean to say that the Enterprise should be hauling garbage. I meant to say that it should be hauled away as garbage.
There's a fight. Scott's first right cross sends KORAX flying over a table. After that, it's the Klingons versus Starfleet, with the barman beating a retreat and Jones taking the opportunity to help himself to drinks from the dispensing machine. Finally, he decides to leave with his spoils and is about to enjoy his last glass when the security guards rush in, followed by the barman, who takes the glass just before it reaches Jones's lips. So he takes another out of his pocket instead, raising his pinky as he does. And that is the end of Act 2. We begin Act 3 in space with the Enterprise orbiting Space Station K7.
Captain's log, stardate 4525.6. A small disturbance between the Klingon crew and members of the Enterprise crew has broken out aboard Space Station K7. I am forced to cancel shore leave for both ships.
In the briefing room, 10 men are lined up. CHEKOV has a nice bruise on his cheek.
I want to know who started it. I'm waiting. Freeman, who started the fight?
I don't know, sir.
All right, CHEKOV. I know you. You started it, didn't you?
No, sir, I didn't.
Who did?
I don't know, sir.
I don't know, sir. I want to know who threw the first punch. All right, you're all confined to quarters until I find out who started it. Dismissed.
The men file out.
Scotty, not you. You were supposed to prevent trouble, Mr. Scott.
Aye, Captain.
Who threw the first punch, Scotty? Scotty.
I did, Captain.
You did, Mr. Scott? What caused it, Scotty?
They insulted us, sir.
Must have been some insult.
Aye, it was.
You threw the first punch.
Aye, CHEKOV wanted to, but I held him back.
You held... Why did CHEKOV want to start a fight?
Well, the Klingon said... Is this off the record?
No, this is not off the record.
Well, Captain, the Klingons called you a tin-plated, overbearing, swaggering dictator with delusions of godhood.
Is that all?
No, sir. They also compared you with a Denebian slime devil.
I see.
And then they said that you...
I get the picture, Scotty.
Yes, sir.
After they said all this, that's when you hit the Klingons.
Oh, no, sir.
No?
No, I didn't. You told us to avoid trouble.
Oh. Yes.
And I didn't say that it was worth fighting about. After all, we're big enough to take a few insults, aren't we?
What was it that they said that started the fight?
They called the Enterprise a garbage scow, sir.
I see. And that's when you hit the Klingons?
Yes, sir.
You hit the Klingons because they insulted the Enterprise, not because they...
Well, sir, it was a matter of pride.
All right, Scotty. Dismissed. Scotty, you're restricted to quarters until further notice.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. That'll give me time to catch on my technical journals.
In sickbay, there are now a lot more than 11 Tribbles.
What's the matter, Spock?
There's something disquieting about these creatures.
Oh, don't tell me you've got a feeling.
Don't be insulting, Doctor. They remind me of the lilies of the field. They toil not, neither do they spin. But they seem to eat a great deal. I see no practical use for them.
Does everything have to have a practical use for you? They're nice, they're soft, and they're furry, and they make a pleasant sound.
So would an ermine violin, but I see no advantage in having one.
It is a human characteristic to love little animals, especially if they're attractive in some way.
Doctor, I am well aware of human characteristics. I am frequently inundated by them, but I have trained myself to put up with practically anything.
Spock, I don't know too much about these little Tribbles yet, but there's one thing I have discovered.
What is that, Doctor?
I like them. Better than I like you.
Doctor?
Yes?
They do indeed have one redeeming characteristic.
Oh, what's that?
They do not talk too much. If you'll excuse me, sir.
On the bridge, Kirk walks to his chair, preoccupied by his last conversation. When he sits, we hear a squeak. He has sat on a large Tribble. Then he notices that there are Tribbles everywhere.
Dr. McCoy, would you mind coming to the bridge?
Kirk takes a walk around.
Lieutenant UHURA, how did all these Tribbles get on the bridge?
I don't know, sir. They do seem to be all over the ship.
Dr. McCoy.
McCoy enters, stroking a Tribble.
Dr. McCoy.
Yes, you wanted to see me, Jim?
Kirk foists a handful of Tribbles onto McCoy.
Well, don't look at me. It's the Tribbles who are breeding. If we don't get them off the ship, we're going to be hip deep in them.
Can you explain that?
Well, the nearest thing I can figure out is they're born pregnant, which seems to be quite a time saver.
I know, but really?
And from my observations, it seems they're bisexual, reproducing at will. And brother, have they got a lot of will.
Captain, I'm forced to agree with the doctor. I've been running computations on their rate of reproduction. The figures are taking an alarming direction. They're consuming our supplies and returning nothing.
But they do give us something, Mr. Spock. They give us love. Well, Cyrano Jones says that a tribble is the only love money can buy.
Too much of anything, Lieutenant, even love, isn't necessarily a good thing.
KIRK hands UHURA a large armful of tribbles.
Yes, Captain.
Get the maintenance crew to clean up the entire ship and then contact Mr. LURRY and tell him I'm beaming down.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Have him find Cyrano Jones and hold him.
Aye.
And get these tribbles off the bridge.
Aye, aye, Captain.
In Lowry's office on the space station.
Captain KIRK, I'm mystified at your tone of voice. I've done nothing to warrant such severe treatment.
Oh, really?
Surely you must have realized what would happen if you removed the tribbles from their predator-filled environment into an environment where their natural multiplicative proclivities would have no restraining factors.
Well, what did you say?
By removing the tribbles from their natural habitat, you have, so to speak, removed the cork from the bottle and allowed the genie to escape.
If by that you mean, do they breed quickly? Of course. That's how I maintain my stock. Breeding animals is not against regulations, only breeding dangerous ones. And tribbles are not dangerous.
Just incredibly prolific.
Precisely. And at 6 credits ahead, well, that is, a body, it mounts up. Now, if you'll excuse me.
You should sell an instruction and maintenance manual for this thing.
If I did, what would happen to man's search for knowledge? Well, I must be tending my ship. Au revoir.
Jones meets BARIS and DARVIN at the door.
Go ahead, sir. Tell him.
Captain KIRK, I consider your security measures a disgrace. In my opinion, you have taken this entire, very important project far too lightly.
On the contrary, sir, I think of this project as very important. It is you that I take lightly.
I am going to report fully to the proper authorities that you have given free and complete access to this station to a man who is quite probably a Klingon agent.
Well, that's a serious charge. To whom are you referring?
To that man who just walked out of here.
Cyrano Jones, a Klingon agent.
You heard me?
I heard you.
He simply could not believe his ears.
What evidence do you have against Mr. Jones?
My assistant here has kept Mr. Jones under close surveillance for quite some time, and his actions have been most suspicious. I believe he was involved in that little altercation between your men and the men from...
Yes, go on. What else do you have?
Well, Captain, I checked his ship's log, and it seems that he was within the Klingon sphere of influence less than 4 months ago.
The man is an independent scout, Captain. It is quite possible that he is also a Klingon spy.
You have already checked on the background of Mr. Cyrano Jones. He's a licensed asteroid locator and prospector. He's never broken the law, at least not severely. For the past 7 years, with his one-man spaceship, he has obtained a marginal living by engaging in the buying and selling of rare merchandise, including, unfortunately, tribbles.
But he is after my grain.
Do you have any proof of that?
You can't deny he's disrupted this station.
People have disrupted stations before without being Klingon agents. Sometimes all they need is a title, Mr. BARIS. Unfortunately, disrupting a space station is not an offense. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a ship to attend to. Au revoir.
In the Enterprise rec room, there are tribbles on the walls, the floor, the tables, even as chess pieces. KIRK gets a tray from the food dispenser. It has tribbles on it.
My chicken sandwich and coffee. This is my chicken sandwich and coffee.
Fascinating.
I want these off the ship. I don't care if it takes every man we've got. I want them off the ship.
Scott enters carrying an armful of fluff.
Get into the machinery, right. Get into the food processors too.
How?
Probably to one of the air vents.
Captain, there are vents of that type on the space station.
And in the storage compartments.
Kirk goes to a table monitor.
This is Kirk. Contact Manager LURRY and NILZ BARIS. Have them meet us near the storage compartments. We're beaming down. Come on, Spock.
In the transporter room, the Tribbles are all over the pads. Kirk picks one up, but there's nowhere else to put it.
Energize.
Cut to Lurry's office.
What's wrong?
Plenty, if I think what happened has happened.
They go to the storage compartments.
Is that door secure?
Yes, sir. Nothing could get in.
Good. Open it.
It's not working, sir. It seems to be stuck.
Here. Let me try it.
Kirk opens the storage compartment door and end of Act 3. Beginning of Act 4, at the storage compartments, Kirk rises from underneath the pile of Tribbles. He picks one up and drops it in exasperation. Spock picks it up and examines one.
They seem to be gorged.
Gorged? On my grain? Kirk, I am going to hold you responsible. There must be thousands of them.
Hundreds of thousands.
1,771,561. That's assuming one Tribble multiplying with an average litter of 10, producing a new generation every 12 hours over a period of 3 days.
And that's assuming they got here 3 days ago.
And allowing for the amount of grain consumed and the volume of the storage compartment.
Kirk, you should have known. You are responsible for turning the development project into a total disaster.
Mr. Barris.
And I am through being intimidated, Kirk. You have insulted me, you have ignored me, you've walked all over me. You have abused your authority and you have rejected my requests. And this is the result. I am going to hold you responsible.
Mr. Barris, I'll hold you in irons if you don't shut up.
Jim, I think I've got it. All we have to do is quit feeding them. We quit feeding them, they stop breeding.
Now he tells me.
Captain, this Tribble is dead, and so are these.
A lot of them are dead. A lot of them are alive, but they won't be for long.
The logical assumption is that there is something in the grain.
Yes, bones. I want the Tribbles, the grain, everything analyzed. I want to know what killed these Tribbles.
I haven't figured out what keeps them alive yet. All right, I'll find out anything, and if I find out anything, I'll let you know.
That isn't going to do you any good, Kirk. This project is ruined, and Starfleet is going to hear about it. And when they do, they will have a board of inquiry, and they will roast you alive.
Yes.
And I am going to be there, Kirk, and enjoy every minute of it.
Yes, until that board of inquiry, I'm still the captain. And as captain, I want 2 things done. First, find Cyrano Jones. And second, close that door.
In Lowry's office, a security guard is picking up Tribbles. Jones's arms are full of them.
Really, Captain Kirk, I must protest this treatment.
Oh, Mr. Jones, with an armful. A few questions.
Captain Kirk.
What do you want?
An official apology addressed to the Klingon High Command. I expect you to assume full responsibility for the persecution of Klingon nationals in this quadrant.
An apology.
Yes, you've harassed my men. You've treated them like criminals. You've been most uncourteous, Captain Kirk. Now, if you wish to avoid a diplomatic incident...
No, Kirk, you can't let him. That will give them the wedge they need to claim Sherman's planet.
I believe that more than the word of an aggrieved Klingon commander would be necessary for that, Mr. Barris.
Mr. Spock, as far as Sherman's planet is concerned, Captain Kirk has already given it to us.
Well, we'll see about that, but before I take any official action, I'd like to know just what happened. Who put the Tribbles in the Quadritriticale, and what was in the grain that killed them?
Captain Kirk, before you go on, may I make a request?
Yes.
Can you get those things out of here?
The guards take Jones's Tribbles from him. They get to the door. As DARVIN enters, the Tribbles shriek.
Remarkable.
Hold on a minute. I thought you said Tribbles liked everybody.
They do. I can't understand it. The last time I saw one act like this was at the bar.
What was in the bar?
Klingon. Him, for one.
Jones points at KORAX. Kirk takes 2 Tribbles from the guards and brings them near KORAX. They shriek.
You're right, Mr. Jones. They don't like Klingons.
MCCOY enters. Kirk brings the Tribbles near SPOCK.
But they do like Vulcans. Why, Mr. Spock? I didn't know you had it in you.
Obviously, Tribbles are very perceptive creatures, Captain.
Kirk goes to Barris.
Obviously. Mr. Barris, they like you. Well, there's no accounting for taste.
Kirk goes back to DARVIN.
They don't like you, Mr. DARVIN. I wonder why. Bones?
Heartbeat is all wrong. His body temperature is... Jim, this man is a Klingon.
Klingon?
I wonder what Starfleet Command will say about that. What about the grain, Mr. Bones?
Oh yes, it was poisoned.
Poisoned?
Yes. It's been impregnated with a virus. The virus turns into inert material in the bloodstream. The more the organism eats, the more inert matter is built up. So after 2 or 3 days, it would reach a point to where they couldn't take in enough nourishment to survive.
They starved to death in a storage compartment of grain. They starved to death.
That is essentially it.
Mr. DARVIN, you going to talk?
I have nothing to say.
Kirk thrusts the Tribbles into his face and they shriek angrily.
Ah! All right, I poisoned the grain. Take them away.
And the Tribbles had nothing to do with it?
I don't know. I never seen one before in my life, and I hope I never see one of those fuzzy, miserable things again.
I'm certain that can be arranged, DARVIN. Guards? If you'll excuse me, Captain.
Barris leaves with the security guards and DARVIN.
Captain KOLOTH, about that apology.
Yes?
You have 6 hours to get your ship out of Federation territory.
The Tribbles shriek. KOLOTH makes a hasty bow and practically runs out of the room with KORAX. Kirk coos at the Tribbles.
I know. You know, I think I could learn to like these Tribbles.
At the K7 bar, the face of an unhappy barman peers out from a pile of Tribbles.
Well, Captain, I suppose I'm free to go now?
No, you're not. There's something I want to show you. Do you know what the penalty is for transporting an animal proven harmful to human life?
Captain, one little Tribble isn't harmful. Captain, you wouldn't do a thing like that to me, would you? Would you?
The penalty is 20 years in a rehabilitation colony.
Captain Kirk, friend Kirk. Surely we can come to some sort of mutual understanding. After all, my Tribbles did put you wise to the poison grain, and they did help you to find the Klingon agent. You saved a lot of lives that way.
There is one thing you can do.
Yes?
Pick up every Tribble on the space station. If you do that, I'll speak to Mr. Lurry about returning your spaceship.
But it would take years.
17.9 to be exact.
17.9 years.
Consider it job security?
Captain, you're a hard man. All right.
You'll do it?
He'll do it.
I'll do it.
Jones starts stuffing Tribbles into his many pockets. Back on the Enterprise bridge.
Captain, Starfleet was able to divert that freighter.
Good. That means Sherman's planet will get its Quadro Triticale only a few weeks late.
Kirk checks his chair for Tribbles.
I don't see any Tribbles around here.
And you won't find a triple on this entire ship.
Bones! How did you do that?
Well, I cannot take credit for another man's work. Scotty did it.
Scotty! Where are the Tribbles?
Oh, Captain, it was really Mr. Spock's recommendation.
Of course. Spock.
Based on computer analysis, of course, taking into account the possibilities of...
Gentlemen, I don't want to interrupt this mutual admiration society, but I'd like to know where the Tribbles are.
Tell him, Spock.
Well, it was Mr. Scott who performed the actual engineer.
Mr. Scott, where are the Tribbles?
I used the transporter, Captain.
You used the transporter?
Aye.
Where did you transport them?
Kirk looks to the officers. They all evade his eye contact.
Scott, you didn't transport them into space, did you?
Captain Kirk, that'd be inhuman.
Well, where are they?
I gave them a good home, sir.
Where?
I gave them to the Klingons, sir.
You gave them to the Klingons?
Aye, sir. Before they went into warp, I transported the whole kit and caboodle into their engine room, where there'd be no trouble at all.
The end. Awesome. I'm gonna go to credits and then we will be back to chitty chat with each other and with you all.
Excellent.
One moment. And we are back. All right, Cass, talk to me about the trouble with Tribbles.
It was a lot of fun.
Great episode. What a classic.
One of my favorites.
What's y'all's favorite part?
I love one of my favorite scenes in the episode is like the exchange between the barman and CYRANO Jones, first making the initial sale of the Tribbles. And then also, I mean, it's something that can't really transition to the radio drama, but like the whole fight, one of my favorite gags in all of Star Trek is the physical gag of CYRANO Jones trying to, smuggle his drink throughout the bar fight. I just think like it's one of the best episodes of the original series, and also just a tremendous example of like the good like the great comedy of 60s era television. Like it's very like
it's vaudevillian,
Sid Caesar quality kind of like physical and situational comedy.
Absolutely.
There's like a pantomime quality to the whole episode as well.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I mean, it seems like, I don't know about Gene Roddenberry, but I imagine that he watched like the Marx Brothers. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah.
Like it feels, all of the television from that era feels very inspired by like those old like slapstick things, you know?
Yeah, especially because you still had a lot of people working in the entertainment industry that were like inheritors of the vaudevillian tradition.
Well, and Desilu, you know,
right,
Star Trek, so.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
I think the other thing to remember here is this show actually was ahead of its time. You know, what it did was it did an environmental catastrophe. These were a metaphor for everything that's going wrong today.
Yeah.
But they managed to do it 50 years ago, and they were like, this isn't a good thing, people. This could actually turn into a disaster. And yeah, here we are 50 years later, and it's going swimmingly, I must say.
Right.
Totally great.
What was I going to say? I know that a few folks said in the casting form that the original series really isn't their bag. So I'm curious. I'm curious to know if you want to talk about it, like why the original series isn't your fave.
Then after they're done, I'll say why it is my fave.
Great.
I suppose for me, it's the one that I have the least emotional attachment to. I first started watching The Next Generation, and then from that, DS9, and then Voyager. We'll talk about Enterprise. But I sort of came to the original series after I'd watched the movies.
Right.
And for me, it just felt so, you know, it was hard to suspend the disbelief for the original series after seeing such other versions of Star Trek. So.
That's why you got to watch it first.
Right. Let's go back in time.
Right.
and then Angel, tell me why it's your fave.
Well, you know, it's interesting because you know, I was born in '88, and so when I like Star Trek: The Next Generation was kind of wrapping up by like the time I was old enough to really like start watching and be aware of it. Like,
right.
But I remember when I was in elementary or middle school, the Sci-Fi Channel started doing like they started showing all the episodes of the original series, and the fact that it's only 3 seasons kind of makes it more accessible and a little bit and less intimidating, I think, compared to The Next Generation. Also at the time when there wasn't so much, you know, data, so much stuff like accessible on demand, you know, was like there in front of me when the other stuff wasn't.
Right.
But so I, you know, I have to talk about how much I just love the character of Spock. And, you know, to me, you know, as somebody who is sort of bicultural, I grew up, you know, the son of a Cuban father in Miami. And, you know, my mom is a WASP from Tennessee. And so like especially as I've grown up, I started to appreciate the struggle of Spock being very outwardly a specific, like, you know, being as a white passing Latino person, you know, especially somebody who doesn't speak Spanish as a first language, it's very easy for me to outwardly be identified as like white, you know, Anglo, and to assimilate into mainstream white culture. But then especially as I've grown up, I've had to learn that there are very specific things about how I view the world and like sort of cultural touchstones to me that are like associated very specifically with Cuban culture, Latino culture, speaking Spanish, that like other people who might be externally visible to me cannot relate to in the same way. So Spock, I mean, and I've like listened to so many interviews with Leonard Nimoy about how like him growing up as a Jewish, you know, son of immigrants in Boston, you know, in the early 20th century, you know, sort of before the Jews were white, you know, how like that informed the formation of Spock and how that part of the character has resonated with so many people. And I mean, there's not as much of that comes into play in this character, but like, I've always like really, and especially also now, like since I've like learned that I'm like somewhere on the spectrum, that I've been diagnosed with like possible mild Asperger's according to my psych. It's like I also am able to sort of understand that feeling of like not always being able to relate to things that you should relate to, and
Right.
that feeling of always being on the outside. And yeah, there's just Spock is like such a delicious layer cake that of like nuance and character, that like even in episodes like this where he doesn't have a lot to do necessarily, portraying him, like you have to sink your teeth into that in order to get all those little bits of nuance that Nimoy put into every line delivery.
I think I have two questions as a follow-up for that. One is, what was it like for you, like watching Star Trek 2 and then Star Trek 3, like in those particular moments in like Spock's legacy? Because I know, like, I'm not super familiar with like everything Leonard Nimoy had to say, but I'm pretty sure that like him coming back for a Star Trek sequel was like contingent on Spock dying at the end. And I know that keys into like Nimoy's feelings about being associated with Spock. I mean, I know that he was on a whole journey to be like, I'm actually not Spock, and at the end of his life, he was like, well, yeah, I am.
Yeah, he wrote two books. He wrote I Am Spock, and then I Am Not Spock, and then one called I Am Spock, which is kind of interesting when you compare his relationship with the character of Spock to sort of Harrison Ford's relationship to Han Solo. It's like he only came back to do The Force Awakens because if they were going to kill him off. And I think Leonard Nimoy, like, I think he was definitely tired of being associated with Spock at one point, but I think he came to appreciate all of the things that Spock means to people, like especially some of the things that I pointed out, that he like no longer felt like it was a bad thing to be associated with that particular character, because it's such an important character for so many people for so many good reasons.
Right.
Because people don't latch on to Spock just because he's a fictional character. People like Spock because he is a representation of, of internal struggle, of trying to fit in. And like, that is what attracts so many people to the character. And I think that's why Nimoy sort of embraced that and like was able to come back to the character. And then also just sort of later in life, like really embrace it and come back to it again multiple times.
And I think there are also other characters on the show that have similar like deep meaning for lots of people. The show is really revolutionary with the people that it cast. I mean, Nichelle Nichols, the first Black woman like as a primary cast member, is a big deal.
Yeah.
And Sulu, yeah.
I mean,
it's just great.
It's one thing that I didn't pick up on when I first watched the show as a kid is it's like, and now watching as an adult, it's like, how scary must it have been to be the guy playing CHEKOV, like in the midst of like the Cuban Missile Crisis? You know what I mean? Like, I think now about how strained the relations were between the Soviet Union and the United States at the time, and like in the show, it's just like, yeah, we're all getting along. Of course, Russians and Americans are on a starship together, and I'm just like, wow.
I think it's a sign of something that Roddenberry really did, is that all of these characters, no matter what race, ethnicity, nationality, they were not played. Most of them were not played too stereotyped.
Right.
Like you'd still get, CHEKOV, though he, with his accent and everything, he was still not played off as the evil Russian, and Sulu, he's Asian, but that wasn't overly played off either. Or Uhura, as a Black woman, she was Uhura. She was her job. She wasn't just this, it didn't feel as tokenized as a lot of stuff from that time.
Well, in many ways, it's like incredible to think now that like many of our workplace environments are totally modeled off of the Bridge of the original Enterprise. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's still a man in charge. You know, it's still hierarchical and patriarchal, but there is this sort of play at equality, you know, that I think that's very specific to this show. I mean, I don't know there was anything else in television media at the time that did anything like that.
I wonder if there's been any speculative leftist fiction that's like a horizontalist starship.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, have you
I've
read?
had discussions about that. Everybody always brings up the Culture series by Ian Banks.
Yeah.
Which I haven't read, but that's the main one. When you talk about like anarchist sci-fi, everybody's like culture.
All right, I'll write that down.
Also, you should read Ancillary Justice as well.
Yeah.
That's on my list. I really want to read that.
It's not horizontalist in the way you're talking about, but I think it's a really great like queer speculative fiction text because, you know, it's in a world in which, first of all, it's seen from the point of view of a sentient starship, you know. And the like in this world, she is the default pronoun, and like ships can't tell people's gender, so everyone's gender is very ambiguous in the text. And also these spaceships have what are called ancillaries, which are like bodies, like actual like human bodies that they inhabit, but their identity is spread like in huge and vast ways. So your protagonist is it's that ship that has many bodies and like is on the outside of humanity in a very particular way. So it's just fascinating to think, like, not in terms of hierarchy, but in terms of identity and, you know, what does it mean to be yourself in relation to, you know, the broader society.
That is actually, go ahead. I was just going to say, one thing that sometimes when I watch the original Star Trek that I wish wasn't so prevalent was the distinction, the very strong distinction between male and female.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the women don't really get to wear pants, which is kind of a bummer.
Or the fact that, like, at least once an episode, there's someone who goes, "She's a woman."
Yeah, and actually UHURA doesn't really get that, but some of the other characters do.
Yeah.
There are a couple episodes where like something happens and then UHURA just has a random line where she goes, "Captain, I'm frightened." And I'm like, okay.
Isn't there an episode near the end of the series where KIRK tells a woman that women can't be starship captains, and that's why her
it's
whole
the very
career
final
ended?
one. It's the very final one part about Intruder.
Yeah,
It's not him telling her. It's she body swaps with him, and then she's like in his body, and she's like, "Well, women can't be starship captains, so now I'm a man, so I can go be a starship captain."
Right, yeah.
Right.
Wow, that sounds like a lot to work through.
It's like the show is really it was progressive for its time, I guess, but there's still a lot of problematic elements.
Yeah, sure. It's all relative.
Yeah. One of the things I really like about the original series is the fact that although KIRK was clearly front and center, he was also part of a triumvirate, and you know, he presented a very specific part of the Dramatis Personae, if you will, to on the stage. He played the ethos. He was the values. He knew what ought to be done. You had KIRK, who was playing Logos, and you know, always had the knowledge and the logic. And then you had MCCOY, who had come along and you know, deliver a bunch of pathos over the top of that. He was the feelings and the emotion drive, and the three of those together work in a way which I don't think we've really had since.
I think sometimes I like try to map it in terms of like KIRK is ego, MCCOY is id, and SPOCK is super ego.
Yeah, no, you could definitely do that.
Oh, wow.
And I think Actually, that reminds me of the thing. You know, you've got the 3 primary colours for the shirts.
Right.
You know, that was brought in because Star Trek was developed for colour television, and that was brand new at the time. And so you needed 3 colours that were very, very distinctive on screen.
Ah.
And you get that in the characters as well, and everything's just kind of signposted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, that's why, although I love the original series because of what it represents, which is this vision of the future that I would still quite like to see today, but I think we're getting closer and closer and closer to World War III. But it becomes more subtle and nuanced by the time we get to the golden age of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. And I love those primary colours of the original series, but I also quite like the shades of grey we get later. And we're getting even more now with Discovery and Picard.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, actually,
think,
Picard is the first Star Trek show that's like a ragtag crew. They're not really operating inside the military.
Yeah, I love it.
I love the idea that like Star Trek. I didn't come up with this. I'm plagiarizing it from a podcast. Star Trek is a place that you can tell a lot of different kinds of stories in, and you don't have to have just one specific kind of type of story that works on Star Trek. And I know some people who love that. I'm one of them, and I know some people who hate that. I think Discovery just like doesn't fit into the world at all, and yeah. So.
And there are people who say the same thing about Deep Space Nine. You know, they're like, "Oh, it's not really Trek," and especially when it was first on the air, there were a lot of people writing letters about how much they hated Deep Space Nine because it wasn't Star Trek.
Yeah. Stupid.
Of course, and then they eventually got a ship for Deep Space Nine, so they were actually going places, and it felt like a bit of a compromise in some ways. But
yeah, about the time the Lowry turned up with a new class of ship for Babylon 5, if I recall correctly.
That's the White Star.
Oh my god.
Surely not.
Is Babylon 5 worth watching? I've never seen it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
the fucking.
Okay.
It introduced storytelling elements that had never been done on television before. So if you want a story that lasts 5 seasons, then Babylon 5 was the first one to do it. Hell, it was the first one to do a story that lasts 1 season.
Yeah, it did all the like prestige television shit that's chic now, like years ahead of its time. It's like all the things that now like all TV shows like try to do. Babylon 5 hit it first.
Like it's more serial instead of episodic.
Yeah. And oh god, I could go on like this is the one thing that like puts me on like the next level of nerddom, like beyond just being a Trek fan, is then being like usually it's like even in a room full of Trek fans, they'll be like, who wants to talk about Babylon 5? And then crickets.
I just truly never watched
Galaxy
it.
Quest.
The Orville. We could talk about the Orville.
Greatest Trek film ever made.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, is there anything else on folks' minds that we want to say before we say goodbye to the audience?
One thing I'd like to say is that I don't think I'm gonna be able to take a shower after this without thinking of Tribbles. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things about this episode, apart from this episode being so much fun, is like its legacy. So there's an animated series episode, More Trouble, More Tribbles. The Deep Space Nine, Trials and Tribulations, is like one of the great episodes of television. And then I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but one of my favorite episodes of like all Star Trek is the Discovery short trek, The Trouble with Edward.
Yes, I wanted to bring that up.
That's a great one.
Brilliant.
Oh my god.
I forgot to bring that up.
It's so absurd. It's amazing. I've never laughed so hard.
Yeah,
Just that last line where she's like, he was an idiot.
Yeah. If anybody who is watching this has CBS All Access or some other way to view it, watch and hasn't seen it yet, watch the Short Treks episode that has H. John Benjamin and Rosa Salazar, that has that sort of like a backstory for the Tribbles. It's tremendous. So hilarious.
Can I also just acknowledge that, as a queer-friendly cast, this was written by David Gerrold, who's a gay man, adopted a child before his time. I mean, in his time, but this happened a long time before this became mainstream. David Gerrold, I think he was just 17 or 18 when he wrote this script and it got picked up. Yeah, sickening, right? That was all of our dreams when we were watching Next Gen. You know, or for some of the Enterprise, apparently. I'm not bitter, he's fine. So, you know, David Gerrold there, sort of, who very much a well-respected science fiction writer, came on as a producer for The Next Generation in the 1980s as well. But yeah, written by a gay guy, so I think it's just worth acknowledging that.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
I just had like such a trip figuring out my character's backstory, even though I had only like 2 lines. I figured it was fun. I'm like, yes, Freeman is an exozoologist, and she keeps all these random animals in her quarters, and she really wants a targ. Like, you know, I just felt like I had to do something that fit the episode.
There you
Like,
go.
like she would just probably be the one person who like freaked out when all the Tribbles were teleported to the to the Klingon ship, and it was just a blast.
All right. Well, thank you all so much again. I'm going to keep the call going here, but I'm going to say goodbye to our audience. So if you could also say goodbye to them. Bye.
Thanks for watching.
All right.